Hey, hope you had a great day. We're going to move on to lesson 1.5. Ultimately, there's a couple videos, three in this section. Um, Ultimately, we're going to be solving inequalities, but in order to do that well, we have to first learn how to correctly write the solutions of inequalities. So when we were solving equations, we had one solution, okay? When we were solving absolute value, we had no solutions, one solution, or two solutions, but that was it. With inequalities, we could have a range of solutions, okay? So we have to know how to correctly write a solution to an inequality. And then I want you to be thinking as we go along, why do you suppose in this day and age it is important to be able to correctly write a solution, okay? So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to set my pen to my highlighter. Okay. Method 1 is called set notation. So after we've solved an inequality, we get an answer of x is greater than 2. Set notation would be written as parenthesis, the variable, in this case x, and then a vertical line, and then the expression, that the answer that you got, these two match, okay? This is read in this way. All x's, that's what this first x stands for, all x's. The vertical bar is such that. And then this is read just like we would normally read it, x is greater than 2. That's the answer that you got, okay? Make sure that your variable is always on the left side of the inequality sign. If it isn't, then it's not in correct form, okay? All right, so let's determine if these A and B are in correct set notation form, and then if it isn't, we're going to state why. So A reads all x's such that 5 is less than or equal to x. Is that in correct set notation? No. How come? Let me use a pen. Because the variable is not on the left of inequality. I'm going to abbreviate that inequality. B reads all x's such that x is greater than or equal to 5. This one is in set notation. So be thinking about, in this day and age, why would this be important to write things in the correct form? The second method we're going to talk about is called interval notation. And interval notation uses a system of parentheses and brackets, not the brace that we saw in set notation, but a bracket. So it's going to use parentheses, or brackets, or a combination of them, okay? It's important to remember that this is not an ordered pair. This is not an ordered pair. And many students, and I get it, it's confusing, but this is not an ordered pair. You're giving a range of values. We're going to use the parenthesis symbol whenever our inequality symbols are just greater than or less than, not with the equal part of it, just greater than or less than. Let me write that. Greater or less, not the and equal to part. So this means that the endpoint is not included. Okay. And then we're also going to use the parentheses always with an infinity sign. So if our expression goes off forever in one direction. So let's say we have x is greater than 2. That means the smallest value we could have is 2. It doesn't include 2 because it's just a greater than symbol, but it means it goes on forever and ever and ever off to the right. So that's when we're going to use a parenthesis with an infinity sign. We're going to do a bunch of examples, so hopefully that'll help you. Brackets are used with the symbols that include the equality sign. Another way of interpreting that is that the endpoint is included. Okay. It's important to remember that the smallest value always goes on the left side of the interval, regardless of the direction of the graph. So let me write an example of x is less than or equal to 5. That means it goes on forever to the left and stops at 5. So we're going to have negative infinity, parenthesis negative infinity, and then 5 bracket. Negative infinity is a number that would be smaller than 5. It's going to go off to the left. Okay. So let's just think through what symbol we would use for a positive infinity. Well, positive infinity is always going to use a parenthesis. It's always going to use a parenthesis. A greater than or equal to symbol is always going to use some bracket. Either one of those, depending on where your value is placed in the expression. A less than symbol is always going to use some one of the parentheses. A greater than symbol is always going to use one of the parentheses. The negative infinity is always going to use a left-sided parenthesis, and a less than or equal to is going to use one of the brackets. Okay. I'm going to work with you on 1 through 4, then I'm going to let you try 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then you'll come back and take a peek at your answers. All right. This is set notation, and we're going to write it in interval notation. So I need x is greater than 2. Sometimes it helps with a number line. So here's 0 and 2, and it's an open dot. So this is going to be parenthesis 2 because that doesn't have the underline on it. And it's going to go on forever to the right. That's going off to positive infinity. And with infinity, we always use a parenthesis. X is less than or equal to 3. Well, here's 0. Here's 3. So I'm going to have a closed dot and a line going off to the left. So my smallest number just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We use a negative infinity there with a parenthesis. And then my 3 is associated with this less than or equal to symbol right here. Number 3, this is a range of values. It goes from -4 all the way to 3. And there are open dots on each end. And so we would use parenthesis, -4, comma, 3, parenthesis. All right, you go ahead and hit pause and try. Let me do 4 real quick. I didn't do 4. This is going to have a union in it. This OR is going to need a union, okay? And so it's going to go negative infinity to 1 because it's all numbers that are less than 1. So it just keeps going off to negative infinity to 1. And then we're going to skip everything between 1 and 4. And then we're going to pick up everything that's 4 and bigger. Okay, this is a greater than sign. This is a less than or equal to sign. Oh, so here, let's change this real quick because this is a less than or equal to sign. So this needs to be a bracket. this 1 is associated with a less than or equal to sign. Okay, so you hit pause, try 5, 6, 7, and 8, and let's see how you did. All right, I'm going to write them up here. For number 5, we would have a bracket 5 positive infinity. 6, negative infinity with a parenthesis, and then negative 7, and then a bracket. Nope, a parenthesis. And then on 7, we would have bracket. My smallest number between these two is 10. That's the smallest. It goes on the left. My biggest number is a 6, and it also is associated with that inclusive. So both of those are brackets. And then we would have x is less than negative 2. So that's negative infinity to negative 2, parenthesis. Then I have to skip from negative 2 to 3. And then I have to pick up with a bracket, 3 to positive infinity, and then a parenthesis. All right, good job. Go ahead and answer that discussion post. Why do you think it's important to write a solution correctly, especially when we're in inequalities? Watch part 2 of the video on 1.5, and remember that Quizlet is due on Friday.